Howdy guys, Bookie Laura here. Howdy guys, Bookie Laura here. Now March is one of my favourite times in the BookTube calendar because it's a time when a readathon is put together called Middlegrademarch, which is exactly the kind of readathon that I like to get involved with. It's put together by Krista from Books and Jams and Katie from Life Between Words. I will try and remember to link them below. And basically the idea is that they want you to read as many middle grade books as you can in March. For some people that may be one, for others it may be a lot more. But they do set 5 challenges to try and kind of, I guess, inspire and motivate, and as readathons always do have challenges. Now I haven't put together my TBR yet, but what I thought I would do is share some of the ideas I've had of middle grade books, because I have quite an extensive knowledge of middle grade books. I thought I would put together a video with just recommendations on some of the books that you could read to meet those challenges. So the first challenge which they set is to read either non-fiction or books which are based on true events. I've made a small selection. In fact, this was one of the ones where I felt I had the most possibilities, but I've whittled it down to 3. So my first one is Skychasers by Emma Carroll. Emma Carroll is like literally the queen of middle grade historical fiction. If you Google her, I'm pretty sure her name will come up. She writes incredible books based on true historical events. I've read World War II, I've read others that I now can't remember, or Egyptians, but Skychasers tells the story of basically the first hot air balloon flight. I'm not exactly sure how much of it is set in fact or how much of it is embellished, because I don't actually know that much about history, but I do know that it's based on those true events. Marie Antoinette, for example, is in it. Another book that I highly recommend is called Survivors by David Long. Now this is a set of short stories based around people who have survived terrible circumstances. So there's a lot of avalanches and quicksand and mountain dramas, but they're all written in short story form, so it's something that you can dip in and dip out of, and as well as being quite motivating and inspiring, it's also quite it's true life. You get a true life version of events rather than just a big drama. God, I don't know what I'm saying. And then the final one, which I feel is probably going to be a go-to book for a lot of people, is The Diary of Anne Frank. This tells the story of Anne Frank, who was a Jewish girl during the Holocaust, and her experiences, basically, of being in hiding as a Jew during the war, and it's absolutely heartbreaking and tragic, but everybody should read it. Now the second challenge is to read a book with a non-human main character. Now this was harder than I expected, to be honest. I think middle grade tends to sort of sway more towards human characters, whereas in earlier, younger children's fiction it tends to be a lot of characters that are animals. But the first one I thought of was The Legend of Podkin One Ear. I read this earlier in the year. It's by Kieran Larwood, and it basically tells the story of a really super cool rabbit called Podkin, who goes through trials and tribulations and adventures, and it was the first book I'd read in a while that had a animal as a main character, and it's kind of, I think there's something really nostalgic feeling about animal main characters. The second one which I would like to recommend is This is Frisby and the Secret of Nimh. I think that's what it's called, by Robert O'Brien. This time it's not a rabbit, this time it's told by mice and rats, and I have really fond memories of the animation from when I was young, and then that led me to read it, and it was a really enjoyable adventure book. In fact, when I was reading it, I kept imagining it being set in my own garden. And now as a grown-up, by the way. The third book which I included on this recommendations for a main character who is non-human, I kind of cheated a bit with, but I went with The Wolf Wilder by Katherine Rundell. Basically, The Wolf Wilder is an absolutely amazing book. It's a great adventure story, but also really beautifully written. And there are wolves in it who have pretty significant roles, so I mean, you should read it because it's great, if nothing else. The third challenge is to read some middle grade fantasy, and I think that this is the one where there are so many great examples of books that you can read. I mean, you've got Harry Potter, you've got Percy Jackson, there are tons of series. I think anyone's going to have problems with meeting this challenge, but I've decided to include some perhaps lesser known books that it would be cool to see more people reading. So the first one I've included is There May Be a Castle by Piers Torday. I read this not that long ago after I met Piers Torday, and it is one of my favourite fantasy books that I've ever involved. Basically starts off with a car accident. The young boy, I can't remember his name, is in a car accident, and then all these fantastical things keep happening to him, and toys of his are coming to life and things, and it is a fantastic fantasy story, but it is also completely tragic and one of the deepest books I've read in a while. So unobviously deep as well. The second book, which I think is going to be an obvious one, is Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend. This is an absolutely fantastic book. It's the Trials of Morrigan Crow, and if you are going to read any book as part of Middlegrademarch, you should read Nevermoor. I am planning to read Wondersmith as part of Middlegrademarch because I've read Nevermoor, but seriously, you have to read it. If you have any inkling to having liked something along the lines of Harry Potter, then you are going to love, love, love Nevermoor. It tells the story of a girl called Morrigan Crow who is cursed and told she's going to die, so nobody really has much to do with her because she's cursed. And then one day this awesome guy, I can't remember his name, but I want to say it's something to do with Jupiter, comes along and whisks her away to a magical world where she can be amazing. I mean, what more could you want? Very Harry Potter-esque. And the third book, which I recommend as part of this genre, I've included Cogheart by Peter Bunzl. This is more of a steampunk kind of theme vibe going on, and it has mechanical animals. I'm not saying anything else, that's all you needed to know. The fourth challenge on the list is the one that I think is going to cause the most difficulty, and it's the one where I've had to include books which I haven't read because I struggled to find any that I had read. But I did think of one. Anyway, I haven't told you what the challenge is. So the fourth challenge is to read a book that's written in verse. Now, I've got to admit that when I first read this one, I thought, I ain't never going to do that. That's impossible. But the more I thought about it, the more I actually did know of a couple of books. So the first one that I recommend for everybody, and I'm not sure if it's middle grade or children's, is The Truth, Pixie by Matt Haig. This is it's a really short story, but it's a kind of positive mental health attitude book. It's all written in verse and it's beautiful, and I read it quite regularly because I find that sometimes you just need to hear those positive messages and realise you're not alone and it's okay to hurt and all that. So everybody should read it regardless of this Middlegrademarch set challenges. The second one is Cloud Busting by Malorie Blackman. It's a book that I read with a group in my class. I think it's written in verse, from what I remember, although now I'm starting to doubt myself. But it told a really interesting story of bullying and different perspectives, from what I remember. I really hope I'm not lying, but if I am, just pretend this didn't happen. And then lastly, I really struggled to find a third, so I went with the one that Krista recommended, which was Inside Out and Back Again by Thanna. I don't know a huge amount about it, but the way she described it sounded fab, so go check her out. And then the final challenge, the fifth one, is to read books with diversity, and I love the openness of this challenge because it's up to you where you take it. And there's obviously different avenues you can go down. So the first one I chose was The Boy at the Back of the Class by Onjali Rauf. This is a book that I read last year, and it tells the story of a refugee, and I thought a refugee having come to England and basically all that entails, and I thought it was a really beautiful book that really addressed the diversity and addressed the issues around refugees and, you know, asylum seeking, etc., etc. The second one which I included was The Goldfish Boy by Lisa Thompson. This contains some mental health diversity, I suppose, because the main character in it has some form of OCD, and again, I really liked reading that and opening my mind to how it is to live with a mental health disorder such as that. And then finally, I included The Jumbies by Tracey Baptiste. This I read as part of the Books in the Freezer readathon last year, as a middle grade horror book, but it was basically, I can't even remember where it's set now, I want to say Caribbean, somewhere Caribbean-esque, but it's an old sort of folk tale that was developed and embellished, and I really liked the diversity there, that it was a story from another culture. Anyway, so those are a few books which I I'm recommending to you, if you're struggling to find books to meet any of those challenges, then here are a few ideas for you. If you have any ideas for me, then let me know. I have some books going on. I'm going to the library tomorrow, so look out for my TBR very soon. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.